So Wales go down 22-15 against Italy out in Rome. Fair to say that score flatters Wales, and to be honest, I'm going to give you a fair warning. If you don't want to listen to me moan for 15 minutes, then I will just turn off now because that's what it's going to be. I'll be totally honest with you. My name's Christian, and this is the Welsh Sports Channel. Okay, so where to start? Obviously, heading into this game, we were not full of much confidence, absolutely romped out in France, but I thought we might be able to put on a bit of a performance, at least in this one, make it pretty competitive. This was obviously being touted as the wooden spoon decider, most important game for Wales in 15 years, and it just was rubbish, to be honest. Rubbish, boring to watch. It's fair to say the conditions were absolutely dreadful, and both teams had to deal with that clearly, and both teams dealt with it well at some points and poorly at others. Italy, I don't want to take too much away from them. They looked in control the whole way through. Everything they did had purpose. You could see their intent and what they were trying to do. Felt like there was a lot more conviction and, dare I say, passion in everything they were doing. And were it not for a bit of rallying at the end from Wales, the subs bench did make an impact. But were it for some poor discipline and sort of maybe Italy taking their foot off the gas a little bit and let Wales back in the game, that game would have been more or less a shutout, the same as the France one was. It would have ended up like 22-8 or 22-3, something like that. So I mean, it was terrible. There was no attacking pattern. I can't actually think of one time we went through phases other than the last 5 minutes when we scored the penalty try and then they kicked it back to us, and we went through about 10 phases in our 22 and didn't go anywhere, and eventually lost the ball. I don't understand it. What I can't wrap my head around is you watch these players play week in, week out for their teams at club level, and some of them are ripping it up. Look at Thomas Williams. He's absolutely destroying teams in the Premiership, scoring tries week in, week out, creating stuff, excellent plays, and he comes to Wales and he just looks like he's never played rugby before. It's weird. Like, his kicking was shocking today, almost always too long, and it made it difficult for the wingers to get a good chase on. And then Ben Thomas's kicking was no offence, but it was dreadful. I feel really bad for Ben Thomas. You can see he's in that role and he's not dictating where the game needs to be played properly. The shapes that are in front of him, it's all like a bit rabbit in the headlights, and it's because he doesn't play that position. When is Gatland going to just understand that that is not his position? He doesn't play there. Just because he did all right in the summer, this is a different beast now. We're in the Six Nations. This is competitive. We need to see some results, and it's not working. The discipline again was dreadful. I think it was 13 penalties. It might have been more. I think it was around the 13 mark. It was definitely 12 at one point, and I think we conceded another one. 12 was what we conceded against France as well, so discipline clearly an issue, and quite often it's not teams give away penalties in a game of rugby. You try things, sometimes you can't help it, you might fall on the wrong side and the ref pings you and you can't really do anything about it. There was some of those, but largely it was just errors that they shouldn't really be making, and it's just a team under pressure, and that's what happens when you're under pressure. But that is killing us. Italy just kicked the points and they missed 2 off the tee as well, so they just literally just built the scoreboard pressure, and it made us go more and more into our shell. There was very few moments that I can think of off the top of my head that were moments where we had them in trouble. Early on, Thomas Williams put a good crossfield kick almost-ish, and Adams knocked it on, unfortunately. But it was a really tough ball to take and get over the line, especially in those conditions. And then there was another one Later on, I think in the second half, where Thomas Williams again puts a good kick through behind, and Adams puts a really good chase in, gets to the ball first, but again, it was really low, it was tough to pick up, and like I said, the conditions were really awful. But outside of that, we didn't go through any phases. We saw Eddie James probably get his hands on the ball 3 or 4 times in the whole 80 minutes. Tompkins likewise didn't get his hands on the ball. Tom Rogers didn't get his hands on the ball. It was poor. I mean, there was no deception in the attack. If you haven't watched Squidge Rugby's review of the France game, it's definitely worth watching. He picked up something really spot on, which I didn't notice and probably no one else notices because he's just head and shoulders above everyone else. But the deception of the runners who are off the ball and looking like they're going to carry the ball to give the ball carrier some deception. There's none of it. They're just going through half-assed. No one looks like they want the ball. When it comes out, it's slow. They're receiving the ball from 9, standing still. It was happening when it's going to Thomas, and it was happening when they are having forward carriers off 9. They're standing still, and then they're running. You're already getting tackled behind the line before you even start. I don't understand. Like, people have been very critical of Gatland and the attack, and I've been very critical on this channel of Gatland and the attack. But today, I was watching that group of players play like they don't know how to play rugby, which is obviously not right because they do. Like, we all watch a lot of rugby. We watch the clubs. We watch the regions. I watch pretty much every regional game, and the players that are playing like this for Wales don't play like that for their club. So I just can't work it out. What's going on? When you actually watch what they're doing, it's just like, how are you playing like that? Because that's not how you play rugby, and you know how to play rugby. It's your job. So I cannot understand it. Wales were very naive. They just expected to just constantly kick the ball and win it back. Obviously, conditions dictated that it needed to be kicked a little bit more, but the kicks were never really good enough, and it put a lot of pressure on the chasers. The chase wasn't good as a team, although there was some good chases from Rogers and Adams. I think Adams' yellow card is a result of a poor kick, which has gone just a little bit too far, and he's just misjudged it because he's just chasing so hard. And then there was one where there was a kick where Tompkins actually gets a really good chase on, gets there first, snags the player, and the player offloads it, and then there's no one around, and he's like gesticulating with his arms, going like, "Where is everyone?" And where is everyone? They're like a couple of meters back. And it's just like, I don't know. I'm losing my marbles at the moment. Zero phase play. The basic skills just weren't there. It was like tough night for the skills, like I said, with the conditions, but the skills just weren't there. The scoreline flattered Wales, and the set piece creaked a lot more than it did against France. Sort of got back on top of them in the second half, the fourth quarter, sorry. So at least they managed to get back into it, but Italy controlled the set piece for a lot of the first half especially, and then into the second half. Henry Thomas had a difficult afternoon at scrum time, and it was just poor. I'd like to know what you guys think of this one. It's going to surely mean now that this running losing streak continues, because I don't see us beating either Scotland or Ireland. And I mean, the romantic in me says beating England the last day of the tournament would be, something that we could possibly do. But I mean, on the balance of what we've seen so far, it's hard to sort of see that happening. I'm not going to call for the coach's head because there's no point and it doesn't help. But I think that the players certainly need to take some responsibility for that performance today. It felt a bit lackluster, and it hasn't seemed like that before. But this one did for some reason. I'll just go through the position groups and just give my opinion if you want to hear it. The starting front row was not as good as it was in the France game. As I said, scrum time struggled a little bit. Line out didn't function particularly well in that first half really. Did get better, to be fair. And then the second rows, Rowlands was busy, if ineffective, lost the ball quite a lot, but he just doesn't look up to the standard anymore, which is such a shame because he was so good at one point, but he just doesn't look it anymore. I don't know why. Maybe he just needs to be taken out and given a break and taken away from the pressure. I'm not sure. I don't think it'll happen. I think Gatland will sort of have to stay with him. Obviously, Freddie Thomas started. They had the disruption of Dav Jenkins and Liam Williams pulling out fairly late, so Freddie Thomas comes in late. Obviously, that's going to disrupt things. If we're being generous, maybe that was what part of the issue was with the line-out. I thought Freddie Thomas was pretty busy. Nothing too crazy like that caught the eye, but he was around the pitch quite a lot, and he's got a bit of aggression in him, which I quite like, and I'd like to see maybe a bit more of that. The back row, both of them was quiet. He had one really good steal, but he was quiet by his high standards and what we've come to expect from him over the last, say, 6 months when he's been in the team. He's been excellent largely, but today he just looked a little bit off the pace. I'm not really sure what that was about, but we can forgive him because he's been super consistent, so I won't give him a hard time. He was okay. He just wasn't what he normally was. Jack Morgan was as good as he can be. I mean, he's the only one who seems to break a tackle in a carry and actually make post-contact meters. He was unlucky with the one jackal that he would have had if Evan Lloyd hadn't failed to release the tackler. Jack Morgan was on that ball and he would have got it if it weren't for the penalty that Evan Lloyd conceded. And it's just tough for him because what more can he do? He's just throwing everything at him. You can see the desire, you can see the heart and the character, but it's just like, it's just not enough of him. We need 17 of him to get this team going again. Then Faletau, I mean, for him to come back, having played very little rugby for like 3 years and just do a full 80 and not really come off the gas too much, got a little bit tired in the last 10, give away 1 or 2 sloppy penalties, which is unlike him. But like I said, just to do 80 minutes when he hasn't played much rugby is mighty impressive. Showed his quality, not as imperious as he has been in the past, but what can you expect? But you could see the difference in quality. He pretty much did everything right when he got his hands on the ball. He was getting some go forward at times, and he always managed to beat defenders. But it's easy; they were zoning in on him, and even then he was still making meters. But it's just it was great to see him back. And anyone who says he's just he's not the player he once was, no, he's not. But he's still the best option we got, I think, or one of, because Wainwright was impressive. Thomas Williams, probably the worst game that comes to my memory that I can see, that I remember of him in recent years. It just didn't really play. He didn't kick particularly well, and at times we needed to maybe put us in better positions, and he didn't. It's tough because we were beaten at the breakdown throughout the game, so his ball is never clean, and obviously he needs speed of ball to be able to do the stuff that he does. But he was off the pace today, and he'll be disappointed with his evening's work, no doubt. Ben Thomas, I feel really sorry for him. He's probably going to cop a bit of flack. He was catching a lot in my preview of this game in the comments. A lot of people were calling him out. People were calling him out after the France game as well. I think it's important to remember that this isn't his fault. He's a 12. He's said he wants to be a 12. Everyone else says he's a 12. Richie Reach was on the Scrum 5 podcast during the week, speaking about Ben Thomas, and he said, I've worked with him for the last 7 years. He's a 12, and that's his position he favours. And then Gatland's just going, I'm going to play him at 10. So he's not natural for him, and it's hard because you're in a team that's losing, you're in a team that's not going forward, the set piece is shaky, the centres change every game. How is he supposed to then try and learn a position that he's not the most familiar with when there's chaos around him? So really put no blame at Ben Thomas's feet. Eddie James, once he got his hands on the ball, got over the gain line a couple of times. One or two times he put a nice little lifted pass through, but didn't get his hands on the ball enough. Not his fault again, we just didn't get the ball out. Did okay. He was quiet, but he did okay with what he had. More to come from him, 100%. Tompkins is Tompkins, and then the wingers was Tom Rogers. I felt a little bit bad for, because he worked his absolute arse off through the whole game and didn't really get much reward for it, which is a shame. But when he does get his hands on the ball, he does sort of seem like he makes stuff happen. He's very, very slippery in the tackle. So I really want to see more of him on the ball. Josh Adams worked tirelessly. You could see moments where he was getting himself into good positions with his, quality experience and his amazing rugby brain. It didn't quite go for him. The ball didn't quite come for him a couple of times, and obviously picked up that yellow card. It was 50-50 whether it would be a red, but I think on the balance, probably yellow was the card, but that might just be with my Wales jersey on. And then Blair Murray, one of the shining lights, took a lot of peppering from the Italian kicking game and dealt largely with it really well. Not the tallest man, but he was brave in every time he went up for the ball, and he had one chance where he had a little bit of space and made an excellent break. Unfortunately, ended up being nothing, but he was one of the shining lights. So considering it was a last-minute replacement, he had a good evening or afternoon rather, and he's one of the few players that can say that. Then the bench that come on actually really made a good impact, which I was happy with. The front row of Azarati, Elliot D and Nicky Smith, they actually won a scrum penalty, which we haven't really had. It was a little bit iffy when they first came on at scrum time, but they sorted it out and then they got on top, which is a positive. So it's good to see the Welsh bomb squad actually doing something. Teddy Williams come on. I thought he had a really big impact on the game. Was calling the line out and actually being bold and brave enough to actually speak when they were in group huddles, and took ball carrying responsibilities on himself, took important line out calls on himself, and took the ball himself. And I thought he was really impressive coming on. Everyone knows that I'm a absolute fangirl of Teddy Williams, so I'm going to blow smoke up his ass, but I think he deserves it, and I would like to see him involved in the matchday squad next week as well, or the week after, because I think it's a fallow week now, because I think he deserved it. And he's coming onto the ball with aggression. It's like simple. When he's receiving the ball, he's actually got a head of steam, and that's the same for Wainwright. Wainwright really sped up our ball carrying situation, because he was coming off 9 with speed, and that's why he was causing so many issues. And he really made a big impact coming off the bench. He was mega impressive. So I wonder, it's going to be like a massive decision now what they do in that back row. If everyone stays fit, does both of them get dropped for Wainwright? Because I don't know, Wainwright is just a player we can't really afford to be keeping on the bench, I don't think. He was really good when he came on. Rod Williams was okay. Dan Edwards was okay. Didn't have the ball, so you can only do what you can do. Didn't go through any phases, so he's just learning. And Josh Hathaway came on early for HIA and had a bit of time on the end and didn't really get any opportunities. I feel kind of bad for Josh Hathaway. Every time he's played for Wales, he hasn't really had the ball once in space, I don't think, and that's where he's dangerous. So it was a tough afternoon. I've rambled on a long time and moaned a lot, so if you're still watching, I appreciate it, but I'll pass it over to you and I will catch you on the next one.